I've put down there on our agenda right at the end, next time. I want to have a discussion with you, our viewers and our readers, as to what we should do next time, but we'll get to that when it's the appropriate moment. So for our agenda today, jQuery UI is nice, but we do have a lot of the same kind of controls inside ASPX. Oh heck, DXperience ASP.NET. And it makes sense to use the ones that we have. Mehul will talk a little bit about the equivalent widgets and controls in a moment. Then I'm going to talk about the losing bindings problem that occurs when you use jQuery and jQuery UI with our controls, or can occur, I should say. Mehul will then show how to use the jQuery UI autocomplete plugin with our ASPX text box. I'll do a quick aside then, if we have time, on the executing scripts again problem, which you may run into when using our ASP.NET controls with jQuery UI. And as I say, next time, let's discuss what we can do next time at the end. So Mehul, it's all yours.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's. I'm going to switch over to
sure.
my screen, so that way I can hang out 1 second.
Absolutely.
And I will show this screen right there. All right. And can you see that just fine?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So jQuery UI. Let's just jump into it. And jQuery UI is slightly different than jQuery. jQuery is the library that lets us get at things, do animations, and so forth. The jQuery UI, actually, I believe was started with like a slightly different group, but there's a lot of plans for it from what I hear, and I get quite a bit of questions about jQuery UI versus DevExpress, when to use and what to use and so forth. So I'm just quickly going to cover one aspect of it, and that is the widgets. So the widgets are the things that are not like animation or effects. They're actually client-side only controls that you can use. I wouldn't even call them controls. Controls kind of tends to infer something larger in the sense that have more features or perhaps interacts a little bit more. So widgets really are, as they say, just small items that you can put on a page to do little things. So let's take let's start with the accordion. So I'm just going to go down this list quickly and tell you what DevExpress has that's offered on the client side and what sort of some of the differences are. So the first one, the accordion, is simply a control that lets you, when you click on it, go and show off a different set of items. Now, we've had a control like this in our ASPX experience suite called the ASPX navbar for many years. In fact, if you want this navbar, it's actually free. This entire library, ASPX experience, is free. So you can actually use this control if you want. You can use the navbar if you want to have things like data binding to your backend, regardless of what your data source is. We have a great client-side API as well. The big difference with the accordion, though, is this is completely client-side. So as you can see, you are writing a bunch of markup to render this. And for theming, you'll have to use the jQuery theming engine to create the theme. So if you have a need, a strict need that this has to be a client-side only thing, you don't need to do some things like data binding, and you can do data binding with jQuery widgets. It's just a little bit more involved, and I'll show that in an example later. This essentially is the navbar control, and I recommend you check out both. The navbar, as I said, probably is going to serve you a little bit more if you've got things like data binding in mind, or if you want to stay within the theming engine of the DevExpress, because this has all of the themes that the DevExpress ASP.NET controls provide. It's also cross-browser compliant, meaning that we support everything from IE6 to Safari on Mac. and we also have options for doing templates and so forth. So good control to check out. Then we have the autocomplete. Now the autocomplete is actually one I'm going to show a demo of today. Oops, let's go back. Autocomplete. This is a really simple control. All it does is it says if you have an input element and you want to attach a list of items so that when the user inputs something in the keyboard, this list of items is displayed for them. It's kind of like a tooltip in a way, but just much more items within it. So it's not really data bound to anything. However, you can data bind it, but it's a bit complicated. So this actually is probably going to be a useful item to use from jQuery for yourself if you're only doing just the autocomplete aspect of it, meaning that if you have something simple, but if you have something a little bit more complicated, what you can do is you can use our ASPX combo box, which allows you to not just create these items locally, meaning that as an array in JavaScript. Let's say you want to data bind to some table in your backend. Well, the ASPX combo box will allow you to do that. So, and it allows you to do it in a way so that even if you have a really large table, like 20,000 items, you can do that very seamlessly because we'll do it with callbacks and all that great things. The issue, however, with the jQuery autocomplete is, and I'll get into this a little bit. Actually, you know what? I'll save this discussion for when I show the demo. So let's move on. Button. All right. So you might be wondering, why is jQuery making simple button? And really, all it is just an input element that has things like rounded corners. As I said, if you have a need to theme a client side and you want to use the jQuery themes with it, the button's it's not a bad thing to use. If you need a little bit more, then I recommend you check out our ASPX button, which one of its main features will be the theming engine that we provide. So if you've got a nice theme laid out with all our diff, breaks, .NET controls, definitely go with the button because as you can see, it gives you a ton of CSS features to really style it in many different ways. Then we have the date picker. So the date picker, just the key thing to remember with all of these are all client-side controls, and sometimes that's useful. Sometimes you want to have something a little bit more interactive with the server side where you got to do some kind of logic or something. So the date picker is very much like our date edit. Let me. So while that loads up. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, hang on 1 second, Julian. We've got some construction happening in the office here, so you may hear some background noise. I apologize. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I'll get back to that date edit in just a second, but it's simple a date edit that is very similar. Our main features will be the, you know what, I'll show the date edit inside of Visual Studio. I think that'll be a little more useful. So then we have this dialog. Now the dialog is exactly as it sounds. It is basically a pop-up control that allows a couple extra animations. So this pop-up, it's not bad, and there's one thing that it does that our pop-up doesn't do, and it's this type of animation. So as you can see, when it comes up, it can do this type of animation, and when you close it, it can do one of these crazy animations, right? Our pop-up doesn't do that. I believe you could probably attach some kind of animation like that to our pop-up, but in my experience, the pop-up we offer is much more versatile because you can do several things with it, like load the data on demand, data bind it, use templates, we support transparencies, and it's got a client-side API. So I highly recommend checking out the DevExpress ASPX control. In fact, I did a webinar recently where I showed how to use this pop-up control to make a very versatile tooltip. So if you're interested in that, I can show you on my demo a little bit later. So next is the progress bar. This one is useful if you want to show a little progress. In my opinion, this can get a little bit crazy because, for example, they offer the animated version, which is fine. It's got a little animation inside of it. This one, however, doesn't really make sense to me. It's a resizable progress bar. In fact, Julie and I were looking at this yesterday and asked, when do you want to allow your users to do this to a progress bar, right? So there may be instances, but generally, progress bar is an indicator. You want to show the end user some state of, completion for a file upload or file download or something like that. So, in my opinion, the progress bar is straightforward. We have a progress bar as well. It's really more integrated within our ASPX grid view. So, and we find that this is generally where most people want to use it. So if you want to show off, let's say, a project or a task and its completion level, this will actually take the value and display it as a progress indicator. But if you just want to have a freeform one, the jQuery version is not bad. And finally, I think we have just a couple more. We have a slider. Now, this, if you need something like this, use it. We have no equivalent yet. We would like to bring you something very cool that does a lot more. In fact, this right now, as you can see, only has one indicator to show the slider, but we're looking at maybe providing something with maybe 2, as well as arrow icons and so forth. So it's something we're in discussions. Maybe we'll have it for 11.2 or hopefully for 12.1. We'll see. And finally, we have tabs. Though tabs is a client-side only version of our ASPX tab control and page control. So we have 2 controls because you can use the tab control within a page, and it allows this type of navigation. It supports templates, so you can embed just about anything else in there. The page control is a little bit different. So let's say you wanted to use these tabs as a navigation item. So you can use the page control, and it would be the same thing, but just up there to use it at a more higher level. So as I mentioned before, all of our controls support cross browsers, callbacks, as well as themings. So that is all I have to add, and let me switch it back over to you, Julian. Oh, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay. Yes, you can ask questions all the way throughout, and Amanda will prompt us if there's an interesting question we should answer straight away. So do ask questions in your chat window, and Mehul and I will certainly get to them. Let me just switch over to me this time. I'm going to talk about this particular problem with regard to jQuery and DXperience ASP.NET. So the issue is this. I'm going to do it with the grid. On the initial display of the page with the grid, we're going to set up some event handlers. What I'm going to do is to riff off Mehul's example from last time, which was basically showing a highlight. I'm basically going to show a highlight on the mouse cursor hover. And I'm going to show that the handlers work, and yay, I can profit, I can sell the application until somebody comes along and says, hey, when I page down the grid, the highlight effect has gone away. So let's show you the program itself. Let's just run it. It's fairly simple. I haven't done anything in particular. I'm basically connecting to the customer's database on Northwind. Excuse that I haven't set anything properly, like hiding columns or anything like that. This is how the application works at the moment. So we can certainly page down, and everything works as I'd expect. But what I'd like to do is to, like I said last time, whenever you start writing jQuery functionality with our ASP.NET controls, it's always good to have a look at the HTML that is rendered by the control. And in particular, I want to have a look at the rows for the control. Because I want to add a couple event handlers to the row, to each row, so that I can do a hover type effect, a highlight hover effect with the mouse cursor. And if we look at the rows, these are the data rows for the grid for the table. So TR is table row. And they all have the class of DXGV data row. So here's the 10 rows that I have, and if we look along, you actually see the data in the row. Oh, here's all the data in the row, blah, blah, blah. So the class I want to pay attention to is DXGVDataRow, and I'll ignore all of the rest of the class names and the ID names and all the rest of it. So DXGVDataRow is the one. Let's close that down, he says, because I can't. Okay. So let me do something else. And close, there we go. Right. So let's kill the application. I think that was the last application as well. So, because I use Firefox, I always have to stop debugging. Right, what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to add a new JavaScript file. I've called it hover.js, and I'm going to basically add that to my page, and I'm just going to show you what the hover.js actually includes. So I have a document ready function here, and the code within the document ready function does this. It basically finds all elements with that class, our DXGVDataRow class, and for each of them, okay, make a note of the current variable, the current element. I'm going to add a mouse enter event handler and a mouse leave event handler, and the mouse enter will basically say for this element stop current animations and then animate go into a kind of light khaki color. So I grabbed off cooler earlier on, and the mouse leave basically animates it back to white. So I've also added, prior to this, I've added links to the jQuery UI, both the CSS and the JavaScript file, and also the jQuery there. So let's run it now with this particular example. Hang on a minute, drag this over, and here's the application. Now when I enter with the mouse one of the rows, it basically highlights to that light khaki color, and as I move the, I don't know how quickly the webinar software refreshes here, but I'll go slowly. And you could see that as I leave a row, it goes back to white, and if I enter a row, it turns pretty cool, we all say, until I go page down, and suddenly nothing's working. My highlight has gone away. This is a simple enough problem to understand. What of course has happened is the grid has gone back to the server in a callback, and as part of the callback return, the server has returned more HTML to replace the data in the grid. In fact, it's replaced the entire grid, the entire table. It doesn't just replace, find each cell and say, okay, the next value in this cell is this, and the next value in this cell is this. No, it just, obviously, I would say, replaces the entire table. And of course, by replacing the entire table, all of my event handlers have gone. They have been thrown away by the garbage collector. They are no more. So what I have to do then is to work out when the grid has finished its callback. So it initiates a callback to get more data for the next page, server responds, and the grid then completes that particular callback. And let me I have no idea why this isn't working. Okay, that was interesting. So what I have to do is to find the grid. I've lost my property. Where are we? I've lost my property pane. Property pane, come back. Where are you, property pane? I've gone completely blank. Hey, Google, where is the property pane?
Try hitting F4.
F4. Oh, didn't know the...
That might bring it back. But make sure also you're not debugging or something.
No, here it is. There, we got it. Okay, what I've got to do then is to add some client-side events. And the client-side event I was talking about earlier on, apologies for that. The client-side event I was talking about earlier on is the end callback client-side event. And this will get fired on the client when a callback is complete for the grid. I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to call it JMB hover, and I'll add a method to it called initialize, or let's make it more interesting. Call it add handlers. And the other thing I'm going to do at the same time is that before I was using the document ready function to add my handlers. As we discussed a little bit last time, this is a little dodgy with regard to our ASP.NET controls. They may not actually be fully be initialized by the time document ready occurs. So it's always best to hang this kind of extra work on the init function, client-side function. So I'm going to add the same code basically to the init. So I'm going to create an object called JMB hover in a moment, and I'm going to add the add handlers method to it. So let's save that and go over to my my JavaScript here. So in essence, I want to do the same code here, both on the init and also on the end callback. So I need to create myself a an object, and I'm then going to set the initial, the add handlers, I think I called it. So handlers method, it's a function, whoops, it didn't take anything, and it's going to basically do all this work. And finally, I have to expose that to the outside world. So there we go, exactly the same bit of code, except I'm now putting it inside a method of this new object that I have. It's going to have one method, that's the only thing. I could actually make this slightly nicer to look at as well at the same time, rather than the what I had before. So in essence, for each item, I'm going to add a mouse enter event handler and a mouse leave event handler. I'm doing this chaining type of thing because jQuery allows me to. Essentially, the return value from any method in jQuery is the jQuery collection set that you started with. So there we are, a mouse enter and a mouse leave, and through the magic of the client-side events, let's see it work. Let's drag this back over here. So I'm going to bring my mouse in, and I haven't connected up somewhere. So let's kill that. Let me see. And what have I not done? I didn't add the... Oh, it's bizarre. I thought I had added the client-side events, but they're not showing up. Is there some refresh I have to do here?
No, that's weird. Go to the design view real quick. I've seen this sometimes in Visual Studio.
They should be up here, surely.
Yep.
Client-side events, end callback is set, init is set, and so if I go back to source, suddenly they arrive. It is magic.
That's a Visual Studio feature.
Oh, it is a feature. Ah, I wonder if they're going to persist it into Visual Studio 2012. Okay, let's run it again now that I have real callbacks. I mean, real event handlers happening. Drag this over. So yes, here we go. So here we have the same effect as we had before. I'm moving the mouse cursor and the highlight is happening following the mouse. And if I go to the next page, same thing happens. I've basically solved my problem of losing the bindings whenever I change from page to page. And now my handlers, which are producing the highlight effect, are working just fine. So on that note, I think it's, let me just close that down a little bit, and that. So we've seen here that we have to be extremely careful when we add event handlers to DXperience ASP.NET controls on the client side. When they refresh, we have to remember to add those bindings back. And as you saw, using both the init and the end callback event handlers for the control is the best way of doing this. And the next one I think is yours, Michal. It's using the jQuery UI autocomplete plugin with ASPX text box.
Yes, absolutely. So let me switch over here and show the screen. So let's see, make sure you guys are all seeing the screen there. See my Visual Studio?
Yep, I can see it. Lovely.
Excellent. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we're going to take a look at this widget here, the autocomplete widget, which essentially allows you to attach an array of strings to display as a suggestion or autocomplete feature when user types in something into the keyboard. So we're going to take our ASPX text box and display that in a new website. So let's just start that. I'll start with a new website. I'll just make an empty one. And I'll add a new page to it. I like to start fresh and empty just to show that it's really quite easy to add all this stuff in there. So add a new web form in there. Now the first thing is we need to get the references to the jQuery. And last time I showed some love to the Google CDN versions of the jQuery, but they're also hosted on Microsoft's site. So this time I think I'll use the Microsoft version of the CDNs. If you are curious, I will show you the link for these, or you can just Google Microsoft jQuery CDN, and they'll point you to this website, which is AjaxASP.NET CDN, which if I control click it, should take us to the site. Anyways, they've got some documentation that talks about all of that stuff. So, all right, so we've got our references. Next thing is we need a text box. So let's add our text box in our div here, and I'll just go to the toolbox. And I'm doing it from the design side because what happens is you need to add a bunch of references to the web config. as things like our settings and our HTTP handler. And if you just do it from the design side, it's just super easy. And then we can go back here and work with it or stay in the designer. Next, we want to add a new event. Essentially, let's take a quick look at what actually is happening inside of that jQuery autocomplete. Let's take a look at the source. The first thing is we define a set of items that we'll be attaching to the text box or input element. And then we simply make one call to autocomplete and tell it where the source is coming from. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you do have an option to specify the source as a string, an array, or a callback. Now, if you do the callback version, that's a little more complicated, and I'll show you a reference for that if you are interested. I won't show it in this demo. We'll keep it simple as demo, but it is possible to do it as a callback, so you're referencing a database through the callback. So the first thing is we need to specify this list of tags. Now, for the sake of time, I'm just going to take these tags here. Actually, no, let's make our own version. We'll call it, I'll use the list of IDA platforms that DevExpress supports. So let's call this script type equals, and it's a simple string array, so we'll call it available tags. And if you watched Julian's webinars on JavaScript, then you'll know how to create all these slick little things. So we have ASP.NET as one platform. We have WinForms, and then those mysterious ones like Silverlight and WPF. And we still support Delphi as well. I was probably forgetting something, but let's go with those for now. All right, so here's our list of available text. We want to attach these to our ASPX text box. So the text box right now is nothing more than a simple, it's a server-side control because it runs on the server, because it allows you to do a couple of extra things than a standard element. But what jQuery wants for autocomplete is for you to be able to tell it what is the input element. So there's a number of things you can do. Now, all of our controls can be rendered as their native element. So if I set the native property to true, it'll set it as a simple input element. But then I lose the capability to do things like theming, and if there's callback support, some callback support. So there's an easier way to get what we want to do without having to turn this into a native control. So that is on the client-side API of the ASPX text box. In fact, let's just take a quick look at the client-side API. And to figure out the client-side API for any of our controls, you can just go to aspx.client text box, and this will bring up the help file for that. And just take a look at the members real quick. One of the things is we want to get the input element. So if I just do a search for input element, I can see here that there's a client-side method called getInputElement. And this returns the HTML element that represents that controls element, right? So essentially, we just want to make a call, say, to getInputElement, and then call jQuery .autocomplete on it, and we should have this text box bound up to this list of tags. So to do that, what we have to do is on the client-side API of this this text box, we want to add an event. So when it is first initialized on the client side, this is where we want to make the call. So here, instead of actually defining it within the function body here, I'm going to actually tell it to call an external event, and I'll call it onTextBoxInit. And we'll click OK. So now we actually have to define the onTextBoxInit, so let's do that here. So I'll call this function onTextBoxInit. And this client-side event init has a couple of variables. It has a S and E for the arguments that it passes. The S stands for sender, the E for event args. So we have to add those there as well. Now, so the good news is there is a Code Central example of all of this, so don't worry, there will be a sample for this, and I'll show that in a little bit. And that approach takes there's two ways to do this, and I'm showing you sort of the easy way using the control events. But there's a way to do this using sort of a global events approach, and I'll show that a little bit afterwards. So now here we have our text box init method, which calls this JavaScript method. So now we can do some jQuerying here. And here we've got our $sign ready, and here I can reference the S, which represents the sender of the text box. So as I mentioned, this client-side init event passes me this client-side object model for the text box. So it's referenced through as, and now I can call it a get input element method that we saw because it references the ASPX client text box. Now, this get input element should give us this, and now we can call autocomplete on it and pass it our source variables. So here I can call it source is equal to available tags and close up this method. Now let's just take a quick look at this in action. So as you saw, it's fairly easy once I've defined my text box and gotten the input element. So now if I hit A, I get ASP.NET. If I hit W, I should get W, I should get WinForms and WPF, and you get the idea. The only problem is it doesn't really look very good. I can't really tell that this list of items belongs here, and as you can see, what it's doing is generating a UL, an unordered list. So I want to actually style those a little bit better, and to do that, I'm going to actually cheat a little bit. So 3325. So the Code Central issue for this is E3325, and I'm using a little hack that converts it into the proper URL. And for this example, we have actually created a couple of CSS tags that you can use. Now, I don't claim to have any design skills, and which is why I'm not going to bother you to try and write the CSS myself. So, but I will explain it as best as I can. So the first thing I want to do is actually add a style sheet. So I'm going to add a new folder here. We'll call it styles. And within here, I'll create a new entry to hold my CSS tags, and call it styles. Yeah, style sheet is fine. And I'll remove this and add these 3 tags in here. The first one is I know that jQuery autocomplete is generating an unordered list, as you can tell. Now, if you're not sure, you can inspect the element through Firefox, or I'm sorry, Firebug, or the Chrome tools, or the IE9 tools, and you can see that it is really an unordered list. So I'm setting a couple of styles for it, and here these simply define how I want that unordered list to look in terms of having a border, a background, a little bit of different font and weight on it. And so now, and because this will be applied to all unordered lists that have this tag, I'm fairly safe because the jQuery tag provides this. So if you inspect the library here, it talks a little bit more about its theming and how you can theme it using these UI auto markup items. So let's take a look at this in action. So now when I hit A, I still get the same one, and that's because I made a very common mistake, which is that I didn't actually make a reference to the style sheet. So let's do that. And I can do it the easy way just by dragging it on here, and now I have a reference to the style sheet. And let's look at it in action again. So now when I type in W, I've got a much better looking set of items for my autocomplete. However, if you are a stickler for UI, which you should be, then you'll notice that this is not really lined up with the text box. It's a little bit offset here. So what I want to do is I want to specify the position to be right in line with the text box. So about a couple pixels down and a couple pixels to the left should get us to the position we want to do. So let us do that. Now, jQuery, in its wisdom, provides a item called position for us. Now, let me show you where this is defined. because if you look at this element itself, you'll see that it's got an item in here called position, which lets you specify exactly how, in relation to the widget where that in relation to the input element where that widget should pop up. And I recommend reading this jQuery UI position document to see, because it's got three things you really need to pass in there: my, at, and of. So in essence, my defines which position the element is being positioned to, so the target element, right? The at is where it's going to be positioned at in relation to that target input element. So let us define that. So it's really simple. We add a comma, do position, and pass it these three variables like my, and I want it from the left and top of my current item, at the left and bottom of the target element of the input element, which we know we can do with s.get main element. And we are done. So now take a look at this in action again. And if I hit D, as you can see, we've got it lined up exactly to the input element in relation, because position attribute takes care of that for us. So that is autocomplete in a nutshell. You can essentially assign autocomplete to just about any input element. It makes sense for text box, and as I mentioned earlier, if you need something a little bit more powerful, I recommend you take a look at our ASPX combo box, which is in the ASPX ASPX editors library, and it's got quite a bit of features for doing large data source. So as I mentioned before, here we've got this hooked up to about 20,000 items. So as you scroll down, it loads up. So I promised you one other thing, which is that you could bind this. Right now, our source is set for available tags. However, you could bind this to a callback to get it from a database. I'm going to tell you to be careful with this. Here's why. Text Plus is actually a really nice site. They've got a lot of jQuery style UI items. And in here, they go through the autocomplete and so forth. And towards the end, you will see how to attach this to a callback. So the way to do it, in my opinion, is for your source, you can define a getJSON call. And getJSON will essentially, if you've got your service set up properly, you can do something like this. Make a call to a URL that says, hey, get me the information I want. GetJSON will parse it, put it into an array, and then you can assign it to the autocomplete. But something to be a little bit more careful of, and I don't recommend it, is here they actually show how to hook it up to a backend. Now, for myself, I'm not comfortable putting my password to my database anywhere within the client side, because that's visible, which is why if you're going to do something like this, just be very careful, because these are the type of things that can get easily hacked and so forth. So as I mentioned, you can do callbacks with it. Just make sure you've got your architecture set up properly so that you're not exposing certain things. Now, if this is an internal app only, or you've got the right security set up so that the user that you're using is obviously, hopefully not root, but is somebody that says, hey, they can only get information, and you've got some kind of auditing on your SQL Server so that they're not, if somebody repeatedly hits it with like a DOS attack or something like that, then you're okay. But in general, I would say use good judgment when doing things on the client side. So with that, I will hand it back over to Julian.
Okay, thank you.
Sure thing.
Righty, hang on a minute. Right, I've got just a quick example here. that shows another issue that you must be aware of, or might be aware of, when you're actually using jQuery UI and jQuery with our controls. Now, what I've got here is I grabbed this from a customer of ours who ran into the problem. So I'm just basically grabbing his code pretty much. Let me show you what actually happens. We're using the sortable method of jQuery UI to create a UI that the end user can sort what we might call panes. So here we have 3 panes in 3 columns, and I can grab a pane and move it over. And I'm sure Mehul is going to jump in here at a point and say, hey, we already do this in DXperience ASP.NET, and I will be quite right to say, yeah, we do. But you can basically move these panes around. Panes B and C have no content, essentially. They're just little bits of HTML. But pane A has one of our grids, an ASPX grid view in it. There's no data. I haven't actually connected it up to anything. But if I actually move the pane with the grid in, oh, it's just crashed. What's happened here is very, very bizarre. It takes a little while, but what's actually happening here is there is some something going on in the background. When you use something like Sortable, and we've seen it with the jQuery UI dialog as well, it's going to replicate the HTML that's within the block being moved, being dragged and dropped. And part of the content of that HTML are a bunch of script files, or script tags, I should say. We output scripts throughout our rendering of, say, the grid. We have scripts for things like the edit column, where you can say edit, new, delete, and so on and so forth. And those scripts get copied along with the HTML and can cause freezes and crashes like that. So there's after some work, the guys on the ASP.NET team, or in support, found out a workaround. Basically, is to disable the scripts. Our scripts only need to be run once. They're basically setting up the connection between the client and the server for each of the elements of a complex control like the ASPX grid view, and they only have to be run once. And if you run them several times, you'll run into other things like losing event handlers and such like. So this is the code I have at the moment, which is pure jQuery UI, and all we need to do is add a little bit more functionality here. There is an internal method of the jQuery function called clean, and what clean does is it tidies up the HTML ready for rendering on the client side. It tidies up. I mean, there are lots of things it does inside Clean. Have a look at it if you want to. It's fairly terse-looking JavaScript. That's all I can say. So what we worked out is the best bet is to actually replace the original Clean jQuery method with another one of our own. We basically then remove all the scripts which are DevExpress scripts from that from the code that's being duplicated, cloned, if you like. I just need to add an extra method here called is DXscript. Oh, by the way, I actually found out why I was having such problems in my earlier demo is, I don't know whether anybody actually uses the Microsoft Natural Keyboard, but it has a function lock key. The function lock key was down, and so whenever I was pressing a function key, I was actually doing control this, control that, control the other. Annoying, but it happens. So, and it hasn't happened for me for a long time. Okay, but okay, if this function basically just works out whether a script tag inside the element, inside the HTML we're duplicating or cloning is one of ours, in which case we just remove it from the scripts array, which is this array here. And now if I just run the application, and so here we are, we have A, B, and C, and I can continue to move A and B around, so B and C around, and now if I move A, it works just fine. And I can do this to my heart's content now. The scripts, which are single-shot scripts, are only being run once when the page is being displayed for the first time, now are no longer being done. So everything works as we expect. So that's another little problem for you to worry about when using jQuery UI, especially things like draggable, droppable, sortable in this case, or something like the jQuery UI dialog, which we have a pop-up thing. So on that note, I think that's it. Now, as I said right at the beginning, I'd like to do a little experiment. I've been watching, I don't know whether you have, the series of webinars that Mark Miller and Rory Becker have been doing with regard to CodeRush, where they'd actually write a CodeRush plugin there and then in an hour. And I want to try this, and Mehul doesn't know I'm going to say this yet, so watch out, Mehul, is I'd like for our customers, you, our viewers, and our readers later on, to propose ideas for what jQuery functions they'd like to use with our DXperience ASP.NET controls. And Mehul and I will write it for you in another one of these webinars. So think about it. We've come to the end of this particular webinar. I hope it was interesting, and I'll just pass it over to Amanda. We have any questions, Amanda?
Hey, Julian,
Oh,
you do have
yes.
questions. Can you see them there?
Yes, I can. The answer is yes. To the first one, does this $.clean code replace the patch jQuery function? Yes. What I did essentially was to look at patch jQuery, which was declared as a global function inside that particular support document, and I just made it part of the document ready stuff. Did the sortable.js index script have 3 equals? Let me have a look at my code. What did I have? Did I have something that said 3 equals? Nope. I don't understand your question there, Lee. And that was it. Thanks, Sally. Yes, we enjoyed it. Can you post a link to that $.clean? Yeah, Chris, what's going to happen is we're going to be posting this webinar up on our DevExpress channel site, tv.devexpress.com. Takes a couple of hours or so for us to render it, and Mehul and I will each complete a blog post detailing the stuff we went through on the webinar, so you can read it as well, and the code will be part of that those blog posts. Or we'll post links to whatever support center questions we were exhibiting. Why did the sortable.js index script? No, still don't understand Lee's question. So thank you, Amanda.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian. All right, everybody. We have a whole lineup of guests.
I'm sorry, Amanda. Can you go back up to the top, Julian?
Yeah.
Right there at the end of this return line in the var, at the end there, you got triple equals.
Yep.
I think that's what he was asking.
Oh. Triple equals. Okay, there are two Okay, there are two types of equality operators in JavaScript. One is a double equals, as you see in C and C# and C++ and all the other C-type languages. In JavaScript, the double equals equality operator does type coercion. In other words, if the left-hand side and the right-hand side are not the same type, JavaScript will try and force them to the same type. It has a set of, the last time I looked, it's like 23 rules it goes through to try and force the two sides to the same type. And the problem with it is you get bizarre things like this. Let me just show you. Something like 42 double equals 42. That actually returns true because what it happens is it coerces the string to a number, or it coerces the number to a string. I can't remember which one, but it actually does that coercion for you. And you get bizarre things like 0 equals false. You get things like, well, the obvious one is 0 equals 0. That returns true, but you'd think that, well, if the number 0 equals false and the number 0 is also equal to the string with 0 in, then that would mean, for instance, that this equals false. Oh, my neighbor's dogs are going wild. This is actually wrong. It doesn't. This is return false. So type coercion, especially when you're not expecting it, can cause problems. So what JavaScript in JavaScript 1.3, I believe, or maybe even earlier, added the triple equals. And what triple equals does is it first of all checks to see both sides of the same type. And if both sides are not the same type, it will return false. So it'll only do what you expect it to do. So this would be false. If I do this, it's also false, whereas before it was always true. This is false, and obviously this is false still, whether it's double equals or triple equals. My recommendation, and the recommendation of a lot of JavaScript programmers, is unless you know what you're doing, use triple equals instead of double equals. You may understand your code when you write it and think double equals will work just fine, but 6 months down the line or a year down the line, when something goes wrong in your application and you're reading double equals as being identically equal, when it's not. So just get into the habit of using triple equals rather than double equals is my recommendation. Or, this, for example, for not equals.
Didn't you have a webinar that kind of covered some of this?
Yes, I did. Way back in the early days of Julian on JavaScript, I did a webinar on gotchas with JavaScript, and one of them was double equals versus triple equals. So
that's when you were young and you needed the money?
That's when I was young and needed the money, yeah. Now I'm old and need more money. Thanks for spotting that and understanding the question.
No worries, no worries. By the way, I think the idea is fantastic to have the CodeRush style webinars. What's really educational about that is you will see what's possible, what's not possible, because we will kind of evolve a solution together. So I highly recommend everyone take advantage of that.
Indeed. Okay, Amanda, back to you again.
Are you sure? Anything else?
Oh, no, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But wait, there's...
All right, so, oh, man, well, I'm going to get you. I'm coming down there. We have a whole lineup of webinars that are now posted throughout September. We have amazing guest presenters and, of course, our DevExpress product training, so check them out and register at devexpress.com/webinars. Coming up this week, this Thursday, August 4th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Pivot Grid User Customizations with Analytics Evangelist Woody Pewitt. In this webinar, we'll explore many of the options that end users have available to them to control the data display and aggregation. He'll also look at ways to save the end user settings so they don't have to reset up the display. And again, if you missed anything from this webinar, or you want to review any previous webinars, including part 1 of today's webinar, or check out hundreds of online product tutorials, please visit us on the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. Again, thanks so much to Julian and to Mehul. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.